Hi, you're listening to It Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is how we adapt. That's the focus of It Happened to Me, which wants to help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, co-hosts Kathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
Today's guest is Jaime Albright Henighan, a wife, mother of 6, and a forensic interviewer and podcast producer at Tenderfoot TV. In 2021, Jaime's life took an unexpected turn when her seemingly healthy 17-year-old son, Joshua, was diagnosed with high blood pressure, leading to a rare genetic kidney disease, FSGS. Shortly after that, her 25-year-old son, Jorden, received the same diagnosis. A shock that pushed the family into a world they never anticipated. Now, Jaime, before we continue, what does FSGS stand for?
Sure. So FSGS stands for Focal Segmental Glomerulosclerosis.
Boy, that's a mouthful, Jaime.
It absolutely is.
Determined to make a difference, Jaime and her family partnered with Nephcure, a patient advocacy organization, to raise awareness and share their story worldwide, even reaching faraway Ghana. Jaime is here today to talk about her family's journey, the importance of early detection, and how education and advocacy can save lives for those affected by APOL1-mediated FSGS, especially among individuals of West African descent who are higher at risk.
Now, to start things off, Jaime, can you share the moment Joshua was first diagnosed with high blood pressure and how that led to his FSGS diagnosis? What was that experience like for you, for Joshua, and your family?
Yeah, so Joshua was actually very lucky. My sister donated a kidney through a kidney exchange to help an extended family member on her husband's side. And we were visiting her at her house, and the children, all the cousins, were sitting around playing with a blood pressure machine. And my brother-in-law and my sister said, "Hey, Joshua's blood pressure is a little high." And I really didn't think much of it.
For goodness sake.
Yeah, my sister is a social worker. My brother-in-law is an accountant. So I thought they're not doctors, And so the next day, I went to work, and my husband took him to the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and they wouldn't let him leave. So that kind of pushed us into 6 to 8 weeks of tests, and then we got the final diagnosis.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. What a lucky circumstance. Isn't that remarkable?
Totally. Now, what was your initial reaction when Jorden received the same diagnosis? And how did that impact your family to later find out that both sons had FSGS?
Yeah, so we got Joshua's diagnosis around July. We were very lucky because, again, he was 17 turning 18, and he was eligible for a clinical medical research trial. So we got him right involved in that. And that's where they told us about the importance of genetic testing. So my children were tested, and Jorden ended up having protein in his urine. And I remember thinking, this cannot be. This is rare. What are the odds that 2 of my children would have it? Even though you hear it's genetic, you're just thinking, come on, like it's 1 in 8. I have 6 children. It can't be both, but it ended up being both of them. And I always think back to that as a time that I jumped into action. And I think that's because I couldn't let myself jump into like sadness. I've taken time
Mhm.
now to process.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you.
It's that mama instinct.
Now, what about
Yeah.
your other 4 kids? Were they tested? Has this happened with any of them?
So what we did was our doctor recommended that we just go ahead and screen everyone first. And so they are in the process now of having the actual genetic testing after I got tested.
Okay.
And again, I think that's just something that we've learned over the last 3 years. At first, there was harder to find testing and it was expensive. Now, several organizations are offering testing to people like our families for free. So they are all going through that right now. Yes.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. Well, I am sure that many people in our listening audience have not heard of APOL1-mediated FSGS. So, Jaime, can you explain what it is and how it impacts those who are affected by it?
Yes, it is something that is taking me even a long time to understand. So basically, everyone has the APOL1 gene. We all have 2 of them, okay? And so it is on chromosome 22, and what it does is it creates a protein in your body, and so it's part of your immunity. In West Africa, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, this gene changed. It mutated to keep people safe from African sleeping sickness. So while
Wow.
yeah, I know it's fascinating. Our
Yeah.
bodies are amazing, and so it
Yes.
it changed. And it changed as the G1 and the G2. So G0 means no change. G1 and G2 changed. And so if individuals have 2 of those genes in any different sequence, they are at higher risk of developing kidney disease. And so it was supposed to do a good thing, and it did, right? But African
Right.
sleeping sickness is not a thing anymore. So it's just kind of laying there dormant. And then if you get what they consider a second hit, like a cold or a virus, that triggers your body, and then it damages your kidneys with the protein.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Now, Jaime, how common is this disease among individuals of West African descent? And why is this population at higher risk?
And so it's actually pretty surprising. I heard this statistic and again thought, how could this be that I've never heard of this? In the United States alone, first 35% of all dialysis patients are Black. So I'm sure that's why when
Really?
researchers started looking
Wow.
into the
It's very
cause,
high.
yeah, in 2010 they discovered the APOL1 gene and that contribution to causing end-stage renal disease. And when you look at that, those individuals that have the high risk genes, 1 in 5 have a chance of developing kidney disease. And when you hear that, you think, okay, what does that mean? And the way I explain to people is this: 40% of people of West African or Caribbean descent, 40% are walking around with at least one. So if I married my husband, he has one.
And so it affects Caribbean population as well as West Africa?
Yes. And it's interesting because there is a book actually a woman wrote, and she followed it all the way through migration. It's honestly fascinating.
Is there kidney disease under control at this point?
Yes. So my younger son, Joshua, is now 21, and he is in the second phase of a clinical trial, and he's doing really well. My son, Jorden, actually was just on low dose.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, he was just on low dose medication for the high blood pressure, and he just had to increase it because, again, it changes over time. So he just goes annually.
Sure.
Yeah. So they're doing well. I mean, I never want to downplay the challenges of living with a rare disease, though. At
Right.
any age,
Right.
the emotional toll, the waking up every day to take a lot of medication, doctor visits, it's still a challenge, but we are very lucky compared to a lot of people.
Oh,
And you are in
congratulations.
an area where you have good doctors. It sounds.
Very good.
Where are you
doctors.
from?
So I'm originally from California, but we live in Atlanta. I've been in Georgia for 30 years. And again, we're so lucky.
Yeah, you have CDC
yes,
right there.
Really good
yes.
medical care there. Yeah.
Emory
Wow.
too. Yep, we're really lucky.
Wow. And how prevalent are specialists in FSGS around the country?
So what we've learned is not very prevalent. And the other thing we've learned is as younger generations are moving into the medical field, less and less are even going into nephrology. So
Wow.
yeah, there's a
Oh.
risk of being able to find not only a good nephrologist, but a rare disease nephrologist as time goes on.
Now,
Mhm.
would a rare disease specialist have any knowledge of nephrology?
No, not necessarily. Maybe some, but not.
Mhm.
But typically, you'd see a nephrologist that just is more aware of this rare disease in that space.
Wow.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
in your family's case, early detection has been essential to managing your son's health. Now, can you talk about how early detection has helped them and what others can learn from this?
Absolutely. So I tell my sister all the time, she didn't just save a life with donating a kidney, she
Mm.
saved my kids' lives.
Wow.
You know, that's just how I feel. Without that day, we would not have known about Joshua's high blood pressure. You know, yeah. So my children, Joshua had a physical 3 months before this.
Mm.
His blood pressure was a little high, and I'll never forget our doctor said, well, you know, he's always a little anxious. And that was that.
Wow.
That's all he said.
And it was a
Wow.
pediatrician, right?
It
Because he was
was.
17. So they're not used to seeing
And he
that
wouldn't have
sort
the
of
awareness.
thing.
Exactly, Beth.
And I was,
Exactly.
you know, and I was with him. So I remember the day perfectly. And this is the other thing that I've told a lot of people, most of my family and friends. Joshua at 17, his physical did not require a urinalysis.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
they've changed it with a lot of our healthcare. Like it's not every year, especially for younger children. So now I've
Mhm.
told my family, everyone needs a urinalysis every time you go.
Mhm.
If you have to pay $10 or 20, it's worth
You
it.
do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so Joshua, you know, we would have known 3 months earlier. And just to see that by the time we found out he was at, you know, stage 2B already.
Wow.
Yeah. So for our family, that early detection was everything. You know, we have met families who their young children are on dialysis. They've been on
Oh
dialysis
my
or
goodness.
had, you know, 2 transplants already at
Oh
25.
my goodness.
Wow.
So we, you know, again, we were really lucky. That was the key to what they say is like saving your native kidneys, right? Because one day if my boys need a transplant, okay, we'll deal with that then. But right now it's keeping their native kidneys as healthy for as long as we can
As long as you can. Yeah.
and praying they never
Yes,
need
of
that.
course.
Well,
Mhm.
speaking of that, what are some of the symptoms of FSGS that families or individuals, particularly those of Caribbean or West African descent, should be aware of, especially in teens or young adults?
Yes. So 90% of people with FSGS do not know they have it. 90%.
Wow.
Early signs are foamy urine, headaches, again, high elevated blood pressure. There's a wide range of symptoms. And when we look back, you know, that was when the world was kind of closed for COVID. So my son was on the computer a lot. He did have a
Right.
couple headaches, right? We got blue light glasses to help with the headaches, you know?
Oh, wow.
And so the symptoms, there's a wide range of them, but the most unfortunate thing is that usually by the time you have symptoms, it's because your kidneys are not properly filtering and there's already damage that's done.
When
And
was
is it irreparable damage or is it damage that can be is somehow treated or corrected?
So they say you don't ever change stages. So if you're 2B, you aren't going to go back to 1.
To 1, okay.
That's why it's really important to get diagnosed
Early
and caught
detection.
early.
Yeah.
Yes. Because you can then say, okay, I'm going to take my meds, drink more water, change my diet, and I'm going to be really actively involved in my care. And so, you know, that's one of the things I think that's hard about this is also we had a story in the news here in Georgia recently of a star athlete who was diagnosed, and the day he was diagnosed, he was full renal failure.
Oh,
oh,
Same
that's
age as
terrible.
my son, and so you just,
Mhm.
it's just, it's a
count your
scary
lucky
disease.
stars. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And when we hear those stories,
When would the typical onset be? How old would you think?
so
How long?
most people are diagnosed with FSGS between 18 and 45 years
Okay.
old.
So it's
So,
not childhood, it's those middle years. Uh-huh.
although I will tell you, we know a lot of children that we've met through Nephcure that were diagnosed younger. And so I always think it's interesting when you look
Wow.
at data, because we meet a lot of children. And for example, when Joshua got into his study, he turned 18 a week later. Luck.
Mm.
They did not at that time accept younger children. Those studies are now opening up to teenagers.
To younger.
I
Mhm.
see. I
Yes.
see. So now you just mentioned Nephcure, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. It seems that is something that's very important to your family, and I wonder what kind of support and resources were most valuable to you that Nephcure offered.
Yes, I found Nephcure doing exactly what my doctor told me not to do, Googling
Uh-huh.
at 3 a.m.
Yes.
Right.
We all are told not to do it, and
We do it and we all do it. That's it.
So I was Googling and I found out they had a Facebook support group, and I sent a long message, and Kelly Helm responded to me. Kelly is always close to my heart. She's a mom with also a child with a rare kidney disease. And on that forum, I felt like it was such a safe space to ask questions.
Mhm.
And that was my first interaction with Nephcure. And then when we told them that Joshua was going to be in a research study, they asked if we'd be willing to share his story through a video. And that's what we did. And so there's so many valuable things, but their social worker, Montrez, is phenomenal. He'll connect patients to resources. They educate, they fund clinical research trials.
Oh my goodness.
They are working on
Wow.
legislation for more funding.
Well, it sounds like it's so important that we get the link to this and we put it in our show notes for
Yes.
our audience, because it sounds like an incredible resource.
This is very valuable.
It really is. And it's not just for patients with FSGS. It's anyone that has kidney disease or impacted by kidney disease, because not only are the patients impacted, it's caregivers, extended family. It's a lot. And so you're never alone. And I think you can find a space through there at Nephcure for resources and support.
So FSGS is, of course, very rare and not widely known. And I wondered, what are some of the main challenges that families face in getting this diagnosis or understanding this condition?
I mean, it's hard enough to say the name, right?
Exactly. You can see I'm having a problem. Yes.
I mean,
we're using the abbreviation.
I think that it's hard for people to understand because genetics in itself are super confusing, right? It's also the guilt or the blame. I think that's something that I really had to reckon with, was as a parent to think that I passed on a gene that could make my children sick is really hard. It's a hard pill to swallow.
I understand that.
And I also think that you worry about judgment from people because there's a lot of blame game with diseases in general. And my boys have run into people not in the kidney space that have said things like, well, maybe don't eat fried foods. And my husband's a research and development chef. My children have always had healthy diets,
Oh.
So that's something
that somehow you brought it on yourself.
Yes.
Isn't that something? Well, it's an ignorant statement. I mean, what can we say?
Yeah.
And speaking of that, education and advocacy have become such a big part of your mission. And how have you shared your family story, and what do you hope people will take away from it?
Yes. So my son Joshua immediately was excited about sharing his story, and he was only 18 at the time. we're so proud of him. He has spoken all over the United States. And as I
Oh
mentioned,
my goodness.
yes,
Wow. That's
even in
wonderful.
Ghana, his goal is to kind of dispel the myth of what someone who is sick, I'm doing air quotes, looks like. Joshua, he's in the gym 3 to 5 times a week. He's muscular. He's, of course, cute as the button. And he wants people to know, go to the doctor. He pushes his friends all the time. Have you had a physical? A lot of kids at that age think that they're,
Infallible.
Yes.
Yes.
So
yes.
he wants to speak to more people about that. Then he also likes to speak to the medical community, because you hear a lot, it's important to have a doctor that looks like you. And while I believe that's important, my son's doctor looks nothing like him, but the rapport he's built with my son is why we trust him. He's phenomenal. Dr. Greenbaum at Emory. We adore Dr. Greenbaum. The other thing that we want to tell
But it's so important, like you were saying, that the doctor also has not just a great personality, but that they have great knowledge in
Yes.
your area of expertise
Yes.
needed. Because, how do you balance? Is that more important or the personality? I think you
Right.
need both. And I think it's a give and take.
No, I totally agree. Just that there's not an easy answer. And I know that we go to these conferences and we hear nephrologists say, I have 20 minutes with a patient. Joshua's in a research study, so they have more time to build that rapport. But we love to share story. And my son, Jorden, he is the Georgia representative for Nephcure. So he speaks to,
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
different
They're
organizations.
accomplished young men.
Thank you.
Very accomplished.
He was in DC. Yeah, he was
Must be
speaking.
proud, Mom.
Oh, yes, thank you. He was speaking at a health equity conference in Washington, D.C. yesterday, just about, reducing barriers and health equity for all people. So, yes.
Wow. Now, many people might not realize the impact that genetic factors like the APOL1 mutation can have on kidney health. How has understanding this changed the way you view genetics and health in general?
Yeah, so genetics are so important. I remember being pregnant and being told about sickle cell disease, which we're told about as Black mothers. I would love for every person of Afro-Caribbean descent to be told, hey, this is another risk factor, right? Or if I'm not of Afro-Caribbean descent, maybe there's another genetic condition I should just be aware of. I think that just helped me look at the fact that we have to know our body, our risk factors, in order to take the best care of ourselves and our children. That's, it's not just what you eat or exercise. There's some things in us that we don't have control over, but we can be empowered to learn more.
Oh, I think, boy, that is a great, great lesson for all of us.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you as a mom, how have you managed the emotional side effects, the emotional supporting of 2 boys with a rare disease? And are there any lessons that you would like to share with others, with our listeners?
Being a caregiver of a child with a rare disease, and I know my boys are grown, but to me, they're still my babies.
Of course.
It's something I still get emotional about, because there's nothing harder than seeing them navigate this. And for my boys, like I said, they're lucky. But there's times when I can tell, Joshua might be more tired than his friends, or he won't go to an event because he says, I don't kind of have the luxury to be as free as my friends. He's not going to be partying hard because he's thinking always of his health. And that's a loss. There's a grief.
Yeah.
So we have to take the time to also process that grief and loss, no matter if your child is the lucky one and it's caught early. Process it. We're big proponents of therapy in our family. I have a social work background, so I remind my boys that therapy is an option. For my younger son, that works. My older son, that's not a fit, but we all talk as a family, and he's sat on some panels about mental health and chronic disease. So whatever works for you to find your peace, because you can't change it, right? But you can be sure to just take care of yourself and make sure that you're giving yourself grace through this.
Jaime, it sounds like you've created such an open and welcoming environment within your home that it would be easy for the boys to share how they're feeling, and for your other children to also comment on what this is like. It sounds like they're very lucky to have you as their mom. It
Thank you.
just sounds like a wonderful, wonderful home life at your house.
So well said, Beth. So well
Thank
said.
you. Yeah. And I think my husband and I are good. We balance each other well. He's okay, what do you need me to do to help? But and I think it's important to note too, if you have a child with a rare disease or loved one, sometimes your other children respond differently. Our Joshua is our 5th child, our youngest, high achiever in school, and she just kept pressing along, And then one day she started crying and she said, I don't know if I'm going to get this. And do I have to give him a kidney?
Oh.
She was very confused by it all. So we ended up thinking, gosh, we've been talking about it, but not really how it's each person's having a different experience.
Right.
And so, I appreciate that. We have a very loving extended family too. And as I said, my sister was giving her kidney away is how it all, started. And so, my nieces and nephews will also be getting tested for the gene soon and things like that. So just open communication.
Excellent. And it's wonderful that the testing is free. That's so important to know.
It is. And I've found nephrologists don't always know where to send you. And so again, Nephcure has it on their site. I believe American Kidney Foundation has some options on their site. So it is becoming more readily available to people who are at risk.
So I think it's so important that we do put the Nephcure resource link in our show notes, because that's invaluable.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Jaime, I can see that you're a skilled advocate. It's no wonder your boys are skilled advocates. And I'm going to ask you, pertaining to your advocacy, you have reached people even in Ghana. And I wonder how that makes you feel, that your message is being received so far away.
Really, I feel really proud and grateful that my boys were open to sharing their story, because it really was their decision. We're grateful for the opportunities that we've had. Nephcure referred us to the KDIGO conference in Ghana, and we were in a room full of some of the smartest nephrologists in the world, and just for them to listen to our input was really felt special. So it's something that we can't choose what happens to us in life, and the best thing that we can do is take what we have and try to make something nicer out of it. Help others. That's all we can really do. And so I'm proud of the advocacy work that we've done, and look forward to connecting to more patients. That's my favorite part of this. Like, you don't want to do it, but if I was recently connected to a mom whose child was diagnosed at 15, and I was able to say to her, I know, I get it. Like, I'm here for you. What can we do?
Yes.
And then that mom will then help the next mom that comes along.
Exactly right. Pay it forward.
Yes.
Pay it forward. Isn't that special?
So wonderful. Jaime,
so much,
thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come on our show and to tell the listeners your story and your resources and your experience. And It Happened to Me has truly benefited from your appearance on our show, and your family has really helped educate our listeners about FSGS. And thank you, and here's to good health, and such good health to your boys.
Thank you, and thank you both for this podcast and for the work that you do, because it's so important to just help people find resources and know that they're not alone. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you and meeting you, Jaime.
Totally.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app like Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenge community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Kathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman. I'm Keir Deneen from DNA Today, and I serve as our executive producer and marketing lead. Amanda Andrioli is our associate producer. Ashlyn Anokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.